You're listening to the RunPainFree Podcast, the authority in injury prevention and correction for runners, with running and athletic functional movement expert, Jessica Marie Rose Leggio.
Hi everyone, it is Jessica Marie Rose Leggio from RunPainFreeNow.com, where we get to the root of your running pain. Today we are talking about the infamous, the IT band. You've been lied to. You've been lied to about the importance of the IT band. You've been lied to about where it is, how long it is, and what it does and in actuality. And I'm going to tell you everything about it right now so you actually get it under control. So we know that the IT band is fascia, and if you don't know, now you do. Fascia is all over your body. There's no beginning and no end. It's there to basically hold all of your muscles and ligaments in place with the joints and bones. So essentially, when something is made to hold other things in place, its job is to restrict, right? Okay, so keep that in mind. Now we have the IT band. It is the thickest part of all of the fascia in the body. It connects outside your knee, below your knee, towards your calf. There is a bone that jets out. It inserts there. It comes up past your kneecap, along the side of your kneecap, all the way up about 2 fingers wide, up the outside of your thigh, and it starts to get wider as it approaches your hip. When it approaches your hip, it fans out and covers 80% of your glute. From there, it continues, guys. It doesn't stop there, and a lot of you think it stops there. It doesn't. It continues. It connects to goes up across your lumbar, across your T-spine, your shoulder blades, and then connects on the opposite shoulder. So your right IT band outside your knee is connected directly to your left shoulder. Your left IT band outside your left knee comes up the left side and connects all the way across over to the right shoulder. So the entire movement of a run is dictated by your IT band. I'm going to say that again. The entire movement of your run is dictated by the IT band. If you do not move your torso when you're running, it's not because you can't, or it's not because you're not strong enough. It's because you actually have no mobility to do so. The IT literally forms an X over your back. It forms an X. So a lot of people's T-spine in general, shoulder blade area, is a known place for lockup, a known place for lack of sufficient blood flow. And so when we get that moving, or you go get a massage in your shoulder blades, like you'll feel heat or you'll feel itching or your back will start to itch. That's because it's blood flow that has gotten moved around. So it's already like that to begin with. Now we're going to add some tissue to it and stop it up. So because when you pick up your right knee, your left shoulder should come forward. But if you're pulling your left shoulder forward, your IT band is literally pulling from your left shoulder, and it's pulling on the outside of your right knee. So if you have any tautness, not tightness, if you have any tautness between the outside of your knee on the band all the way up your back to your other shoulder, expect a mobility issue. So basically, the IT band's job is to restrict your mobility of your movement, literally. So you have to foam roll. There's no way around it. You must be foam rolling your entire body, guys. Your entire body, head to toe, base of your neck to the base of your spine, your glutes, your outer hip, your IT band, your quad, your inner thigh, your groin, your hamstrings, your calves, and your feet. You have to foam roll all of that. There's specifics, and you'll be able to see, I'm doing a foam roll video that's very body part specific. So I'll have all this on my website at RunPainFreeNow.com. And I'll definitely put out a notice about that. So just keep tuned about that, because I'm going to go over a lot of places that people don't foam roll, don't know how to foam roll. Even if you're foam rolling your IT band, you're probably not doing it right, or efficient rather, or beneficial rather. So just keep an eye out for that video to get this part of your running issues under control at the root level. So let me go back to what I was saying. So the IT band literally is restricting your mobility. So if you don't foam roll, you will never release the strain on the joints from the IT band. So the IT band's job is to make sure you don't overextend your leg when you're stretching out, or that it doesn't over pull on your hip when you're pulling back, or when you're extending your hip behind you in your push off. It also doesn't allow you lose torque. A lot of your power from a run is coming from your core being your abs and your back. Okay, guys, your core is both front and back. You can't have front abs without a strong back. If you don't have abs, it's because your back is probably not strong and it's not working right. It's more than likely weak, so that's why. But the IT band literally locks that up. So if you don't have the twisting, you don't have the torque. And torque is so much power on your run that you're not using because you don't have it. So releasing all the strain in your upper shoulders and your back will help provide more mobility. When we foam roll, we are literally generating blood flow to that tissue. Tissue that doesn't get good blood flow, it gets like filled with toxins and it gets really locked up, and it's like chewing a piece of gum and sitting it out and then waiting a day and then going back and getting that piece of gum. How hard that gum is what your IT band is like, what fascia is like. It gets that taut. And I'm being very specific about the words I'm using, and I'll explain later on. But again, taut. IT bands are tension. So it's very taut on the muscles and the surrounding areas. So this way, when we get the blood flow into the tissue, we create pliability. When we create pliability in tissue, we release the strain off the joint. When the strain comes off of the joint can expose itself and tell us what it can and can't do. And at that point, the muscles around the joint show us what their function or dysfunction is. That's the only window we have to address those issues. The only window. And so it's extremely important that you start the foam rolling to get the generation of blood flow, oxygen to the muscles. The muscles start to move around and get back in a line. Like natural movement just gets you out of alignment all day, guys. Like that's just normal. That's normal, let alone being an athlete that runs 26.2 miles for fun. I mean, and this is not including your daily runs, your weekly runs, any speed work that you're doing, which I'll get into that on another episode of podcasting because I need to get into speed work. But this is, we get out of alignment all day. So when we foam roll and it loosens up that tautness and restriction around our hip, our joints and muscles, we actually allow the muscles to move and get back into alignment, back into an optimal position to fire, to work, to support joints. Otherwise, the IT band's just holding all your muscles in the wrong position, all your joints in the wrong position, and then saying, okay, go run. Every time you run, it's 2.2 pounds of pressure per step. So you are building muscle in that position. It's just over a longer period of time. And if you go back to another episode that I talked about in my podcast, that I was talking about the RunPainFree program in and of itself, I talk about how people work out and because they're injured, they're like, oh, I'll work out more. And it actually makes the injury worse because you're compounding the movement pattern that's dysfunctional in the first place by adding weight and resistance to it, and you're actually training it to stay that way. So it's actually the worst thing you could do. You need to take the strain off of the joint to expose the joint, to expose the muscles around it, and then backtrack your way in. And that's the podcast I spoke about the RunPainFree program in and of itself. Going back to the IT band, again, if you just keep running with this IT band the way it is, you're just compounding that dysfunction. You're building the dysfunction worse and stronger. So because we have separate issues, we have a tissue issue and we have a muscle issue. The problem is the tissue is on and around all the muscles. So it dictates all of the mobility of them or the ability they have to fire or restricts them from firing completely. That comes from tissue. So we have to foam roll that IT band to allow the entire gamut to open up. Now, you can't just foam roll like one part. You got to foam roll the whole thing because wherever you don't foam roll, the tissue will bulk up and settle. So it makes it actually worse. So you need to make sure you're rolling from this lowest point to your knee as possible without rolling over the joint, all the way up and roll over your hip joint. The only joint you can roll over and bone really is your hip. So you want to roll all the way over your hip as well as your hip flexors. When you're rolling your quad, your inner thigh, make sure you're rolling up on top of your hip flexor. Legitimately get on top of it. It should hurt a little bit. And then you want to roll your upper back, your T-spine, your armpits, all that stuff, because that is literally covered by the IT band in its restriction process. And it's really trying to protect you, but you have to basically say, hey, tissue, I'm an athlete. We got this. Let's just give me some pliability here so I can actually move again. And then I'll train you to be supportive and like, don't freak out on me. It's kind of like a conversation you have with your body, basically. That's what foam rolling is. So then I want to go over the difference between restriction, because I keep talking about restriction, and tightness. Restriction is tissue, tightness is muscle. Restriction needs to be pressed out. Tightness needs to be stretched out. Two totally different animals. And a lot of you guys think that if you foam roll, that means you stretch too. No, it doesn't. Stretching and foam rolling are two totally different things. Longest thing I've ever been is a dancer, and a dancer is telling you if you have a choice to either foam roll or stretch, you need to be foam rolling. If you don't foam roll and you just stretch, you're not going to get the full range of motion you actually have, because the tissue is going to restrict you from stretching too much. If you foam roll, the strain on the joints gets released. Blood flow gets to the joint, you immediately become pliable, and the muscle gets reactive. So if you were to stretch after you foam roll, you would actually get the full potential stretch, the full potential range of motion, and what have you. So foam rolling is always number one to stretching, always. So you gain the mobility. If you just foam roll and you don't have time to stretch, you're still going to have better mobility because you took the strain off of the joint at the root level. So just naturally, your muscles will have more pliability because the strain is gone. I hope that makes sense to you guys. So definitely make sure you're foam rolling. Tension needs to be pressed out. You cannot stretch your IT band. You can't stretch tissue. You just can't. You can break it down, you can manipulate it, but it actually goes right back together. It's a very quick amount of time that the tissue leaves itself open and pliable. And that's a very small window you have to address things right away or move right away so that it keeps it there. So that's why you want to foam roll as close to running as possible, both pre and post. So you're just making sure your joints stay pliable, stay mobile, don't get seized up, don't get locked up. They get good joint flow, good blood flow. Like I say, keep it juicy. The more juice you got to those joints, the better the muscles are going to activate. The better everything is going to be, and the better you'll feel. So the IT band's job is, it's doing its job to restrict you, but you need to coach it along with the foam rolling and say, listen, I just need some more pliability, and then I'm going to train you to stay there, and I'm going to give you support. Because once we get the restriction off of you, we're then able to address muscular dysfunction. And at no point before then can you address muscular dysfunction. So most people come to me with two issues. We have a tissue issue, which is IT band, and then we have a muscular dysfunction issue. Now, I say I get all the lazy butts in New York City, and they're runners. The butt is the most important muscle on the body because it's where the body cancels at zero. So where everything up is dictated by the waist and everything down is dictated by the waist. So that's where the body cancels at zero. Everything is up and down from that central location. Because your glutes sit where the body cancels at zero, it literally supports your spine and it supports your hips, which is how your lower body moves. So it is the most important muscle in the body. When the butt does not fire or activate, by default, there's always a close by muscle that's going to take on the job of whatever muscle's not working. In this case, the hamstrings take on their job. When the hamstrings do the job of the glute, that sends your entire hip joint into dysfunction. Now you have a dysfunctional hip. However, you're still going to run, right? So you're still going to pick up your feet, right? But now the glute's not doing it. The hamstring is trying to stabilize when it's not its job on a run to stabilize, okay? The job of a hamstring is to measure the extension in front of your leg to make sure that you haven't overextended your leg and then pull you backwards. Butt kick, basically. So your hamstring is always measuring distance, if you will, and it's always trying to keep you safe. So now it's trying to stabilize and extend at the same time. Not happening. That's how you get a hamstring strain. Because the hamstrings are attached right up underneath the glute, they pull on the sacrum. So now you'll have low back pain. So everybody's like, oh, I have low back pain. I must have tight hamstrings. No, you have dysfunctional hamstrings that are working because your butt isn't working. And if your butt isn't working, then we have a hip issue. So everything else around it is firing that it shouldn't, and it's causing other problems. Then you have the quad. The quad starts to do the work of lifting up your leg because the hip flexor's not doing it, because the entire hip joint is in dysfunction because the glute's not working and the hamstrings are. So now the quads start to overbuild, and that's why so many people are quad dominant. You're quad dominant because your 2.2 pounds of pressure of every time you step in a run is building muscle every single time. So you're building your quads up every single time. In doing so, you bulk out your quad and you actually gain more muscle in your quads dysfunctionally. And if you look down, you probably have a little bit of an arc of a muscle that comes from where your hip flexors are, or the indent of your thigh to hip area. If you stand up and you see a little bit of a bubble almost that comes out and then it goes into your quads, that's dysfunctional muscle build. That's not normal. Like, you shouldn't have that. It's only there because you're dysfunctionally using your quads. And the more meat on your quads, the more weight on your hip flexor, and then you strain your hip flexor. Or you strain your groin. A lot of women get groin or inguinal crease. Inguinal crease is the little V of your hip, like around in your crotch area. That's called the inguinal crease. So a lot of people get pain there. A lot of pelvis insertion pain. That's why. Because your glutes haven't worked, and God knows. Your hamstrings are dysfunctionally working. Your quads are being overbuilt, and all that weight is hanging on the front of your leg. Now you're just straining the hell out of your pelvis. Your abductors, your adductors, your obliques can't fire. Which is your core stabilizers, or your obliques. They attach into your crotch themselves and then attach to the psoas that goes up over your hip and attaches your pelvis to your sacrum. It attaches your front to back, the psoas muscle. There's a lot of things happening in that crotch area that you don't want to be playing with. But that's what happens when your IT band is restricting all of this muscle function and you're still running. Everything else is going to start to work for you in a way that allows you to run until the point where you can, until the point where you can't run. That's what your body's going to do. It's the most amazing compromiser out. So, this is just something you really want to pay attention to, and really understand where the IT band is, what it's doing, and where is it affecting you most. Because it's definitely affecting your entire run. We just need to figure out, where it is on you, what's the worst on you. But the best thing to do is really foam roll the whole gamut. And the more aware you are of your body and how it mechanically works, the better you're going to be as a runner overall. And that's the whole point of the RunPainFree podcast, is to just help you running better overall and reach as many people as I possibly can to do that. Because there's so much crap out here that makes no friggin' sense whatsoever. And it's just shameful. So I hope that goes over how imperative foam rolling is to get the strain off of the joints and allow for mobility and the ability to actually strengthen those muscles to get them working for you. It starts at the IT band. It starts at the IT band big time. And I really cannot be more serious about how important it is that you foam roll everything, because the IT band literally is touching something of everything. So, once again, Jessica at runpainfreenow.com. Message me anywhere. On Instagram, it's runpainfree. On Twitter, it's runpainfreenow. And facebook.com/runpainfreenow. Message me. I'm on any of those sites, or, leave a comment here for the podcast. I hope that I've helped you today learn more about your IT band and how much it's actually dictating your run. And I hope you have a better run tonight for it. Talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening.